Hi, this is Gina with Resplendent Daughter Ministries. You know, one of the things that is amazing about the Bible is that you can study it for a lifetime and still learn something new. And I learned something in my recent study of Hebrews that I had not known before. I was studying in Hebrews chapter 2, verses 2 and the first part of verse 3. And what I learned is that the Old Testament law was delivered to men by angels. Look at these verses. They say, "For since the message declared by angels proved to be reliable, and every transgression or disobedience received a just retribution, how shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation?" Now, the first part of that says that the message was declared by angels was what I was talking about. And we have no direct testimony in the Old Testament of this happening, but the closest we can get to it is in Deuteronomy chapter 33, verse 2, where it says, "He said, quote, the Lord came from Sinai and dawned from Seir upon us. He shone forth from Mount Paran. He came from the 10,000s of holy ones with flaming fire at his right hand," end quote. But then, even though that Old Testament reference seems a little oblique, the Apostle Paul said in Galatians 3:19 that this method of delivery and declaration was from the angels. And also Luke records the first martyr, Stephen, saying something similar. So the point is this, that the Old Testament law was brought to mankind from God the Father by the means of his holy angels. However, the point that the writer of Hebrews made is that the gospel was not entrusted to mere angels. The gospel came to us through the work of God himself in the person of his Son, Jesus Christ. This makes salvation, of course, if we didn't know it already, exponentially greater than the Old Testament law, although that doesn't negate the law or diminish it. Christ stated that he came to fulfill the law, not to abolish it. That is, he came to complete it. We read this in Luke chapter 4 and in Mark chapter 1. This great salvation that's provided to us by and mediated on behalf of our great high priest, Jesus Christ, is the overall theme of the book of Hebrews. It's a theme that we'll give further treatment to later as we go through the book. But what does it mean to neglect such a great salvation? One commentator, Cockerell, who wrote recently in the past few years this great commentary on the book of Hebrews, says that neglect means to despise God's revelation and to treat it as though it doesn't matter, to treat it as though it's inconsequential. We read in the verses from Hebrews 2 that neglecting the Old Testament law involved physical punishment and sometimes even death. The penalty for ignoring the gospel is even worse than that, though. It's spiritual death. So it's clear from this scriptural warning that any person who rejects Jesus Christ's only way to peace with God will not escape the fires of hell. But more than that, I believe that this first warning from the author of Hebrews is also for us Christians. Even though we possess Christians' salvation for ourselves, we often let ourselves be distracted by what I'll call shiny things, earthly pleasures that consume an inordinate amount of our time. While our own salvation is secure, how can we, to borrow an expression, fiddle while Rome burns? How can we spend our time consumed with our own personal pleasures and satisfaction and entertainment while those around us who have not heard the gospel are bound for hell? The warning for Christians is that we will lose rewards and perhaps even face some displeasure from the Savior if we hoard the gifts that we've been given. So I pray that we'll use our time wisely every day. I'm speaking specifically to myself. It's a constant challenge, isn't it? The older I get, the more conscious I am that my time here is limited, and I need to choose well how I spend it. Let's thank the Lord for giving us the grace to hear and accept and not to reject His incomparable salvation. It's only through the miracle of His goodness and kindness that could have been accomplished, you know. I'm grateful, forever grateful.